Hello and welcome to the final installment of the top 10 for Win Some Lose More. My name is Dieter Loosemore, joined again by my brother Rick as we work through our top 50 games of all time in our personal opinions. 10 to 1.
Yeah, I mean, kind of worth saying as well. No crossovers in that last one, and I'm actually
No,
expecting only just the one on this list.
only one that I would dare put money on if I
Yeah,
were to
I
do
think I
so.
think I think it's probably fair. Um, well, and we like to do this in the top 10. We have the boxes to show. So my number 10, which is I think number 10 from last year. Yes, it's held position. It's Downforce.
Crossover overall, but
Indeed, yes, yeah, we like it. We like it a lot. Like
mhm.
you said earlier, it's kind of a not quite camel up killer, but it definitely supplanted that in my sort of like racing gambling game.
Yeah.
Really fun, and I've got all the expansions, the expanded boards. Way more fun than I ever expected it to be, and just consistently gets played. And it now gets paid by my kids quite a lot. Now I don't do any of the auction or the gambling or any of that kind of thing. I literally just have a deck of cards
Yeah.
and they read out the numbers and the colors, and we nominally choose, I want to be red, I want to be green. And so we know who we're cheering for. But it's a good way of them learning numbers, good way of them learning colors and that kind of thing. And I've invested in these little miniature cars. There's Lightning McQueen, there's Chick Hicks, or is all out of focus. I can't make it work. Jackson Storm. But anyway, they fit on the board nicely, and now they're like, can we play cars, Daddy? And that's gold. And so for that, if nothing else, keeps it on the top 10. And we've got lots of their own kids games, but they think it's a special treat because they get to play one of Daddy's games. One day they'll find out they're not actually playing the right rules. But hey, number 10, Downforce.
My number 10, down two spaces, just because some things have come and gone. I wouldn't be too surprised if it's not in the top 10 next year.
Mm-hmm.
Only because, I don't know, I think it's great. This is The Crew. Wonderful game. Cooperative trick taking sort of scenario, but I only tend to do the same two or three because that's the fun level that I enjoy teaching people at. Um, Works really well. I'd be interested to try the second one. Apparently, that tweaks some things and makes some things more accessible. But as a very clean kind of entry into things, this just works really well. It's coming out less, and I think I'm less
Yes.
staggered by what it gives. Um, I love it, and I have great use from it, and it enchants a lot of people. Not everybody. You aren't so fussed as me. That's fine. But
54.
yeah,
54.
it get okay just outside. It it get like on tour from last time. You get it wrong and go, oh, okay, this is how we need to do this because there's limited communication. You can't just say, well, I need the yellow blue. You've got the yellow blue. Play the yellow blue, the blue 8 or something. Um, Play that, and then I'll play this, and I'll get that. Like, you can't do that. You can only present information by laying one of the cards in your hand, still available for selection later on, and just marking whether it's the highest of that color, the only of that color, or the lowest of that color. That's the only information you're allowed to give for during the entire round once. And there's just lots of things that just work really well for me in it. But it's teetered. Targi, the crew was really close, which would be 10, which would be 11. The crew won on table time, but I think maybe Targi is a better game. I don't know. I'll have that conversation with myself another time. But for now, number 10, the crew.
Very good. Very solid entry. And yeah, just didn't do it for us. My wife did stick and click into it. I thought it was very interesting, very clever. But I think I can see why it would drop because once you've got over that sort of intrigue phase
Mm.
and working through it, then you go, is it a game I just want to play? Maybe not. Maybe not. Well, I've got good news for you because my number 9 has been number 7 2 years running, and
Oh,
you
finally
always
not number 7.
you always thought it was a cheat and a gimmick, but it really, really hasn't been. But for no reason except a little bit of playtime, it's Seven Wonders Duel. Oh, that's a reflection. Ta-da! It's a great game. It is easily my number one two-player only game.
Mhm.
And for all the reasons that you talked about it earlier, I love the open draft, and I also love that there's hidden stuff. And I can't even understand. I mean, I know there are people in the world who are not like me, who want to play the sort of feast for Odins and be able to plan out every move that's going to happen. But I do want a little bit of intrigue, a little bit of bite, particularly in two player. I was, like I say, I was playing it not so long ago, and I was teaching someone new, and they were saying, oh, they wanted to know how to play it, what top tips I could do. I was like, always go for stuff that's free. I said, what I like to do as well, I like to force the other person to reveal the unseen cards.
Yes.
That's a tactic. That's strategy.
Mm.
It may not be that you get to decide from point A to point 10, Z, what you're going to do.
We're both doing
you
very
can't
well.
count. Yeah, no, yeah. But you can't plan that out. But what you can do is strategically work with the information that you've got and force your opposition, because that's what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
It's right. I first time we played it together, I won militarily. And it's never happened again, because after that, military becomes an arms race.
Mm.
And so it's not about what points you can score. It's not about finding synergy between your cards. It's about playing your opposition. It is a duel in the true sense of the word. It's about saying, this is our war ground. This is our drafting that we can do. These are the things that I can do, and these are the ways I can stop you. The first time I ever played it, I played with a guy. He's a big fan of Seven Wonders. He knew that I wasn't. I was like, I want to give this a go. We went to a board game cafe. We played it 4 times on the spin, and I beat him every single time. And he looked at me, he's like, how? He's American. He's like, how do you keep beating me? I've played this game so much. I know Seven Wonders inside out. And there was a couple of scoring differences. I said, but the difference is you're playing Seven Wonders. I'm playing you.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to stop you winning. And that's a massive, massive difference. And it's, for me, what makes the game work and what makes it stand out way against Seven Wonders, the original, because it has those arms race things. Even the fact that you're like, oh, some people don't like those cover cards, that makes the game. Makes the game. Otherwise, it'd just be a bland, you might as well play any Stefan Feld point salad you like. And I'm not knocking Stefan Feld, I like his games. But I like the intrigue of the duel. And that was much more than I wanted to say on that game. And maybe I should put it back at number 7, because I really like it. But Seven Wonders Duel, number 9.
Right. My number 9, I'm just going to clarify something on what we've been talking about with how our selections have come about. And I've labored quite heavily on table time generally. This top 10, you won't see that in the same way. The thing that kind of was different when I was approaching my list this time was potential table time, scope. I can't really define what I mean, but like, given the types of people that I play with and anticipate playing with, what are the games I'm going to go to first that I love and would be a top 20 game in and of themselves, but are the ones that I'm going to pull out. So my number 9 was number 15 last year. Rick mentioned it in the last list. This is up 6 spaces. It's Century Spice Road. It is the first of the trilogy, because the utility of this game is incredible. There is enough for hardened gamers to have a nice, light, fun time. And there is so much for new people to discover some excellent mechanisms and have 5-second turns, which I think is really important for introducing somebody to anything, is to give them it bite-sized, is to give it in an amount that isn't going to overwhelm them, that still feels challenging. There's still lots of choice here. I might take 3 seconds to take the turn and they take 10. That's fine. They've taken 3 times as long as me, but that's still only 10 seconds, not 5 minutes trying to figure out one move. You have 4 options. Pick up a card, play a card, turn in resources to pay for one of the points cards, or rest and pick up all the cards you've played. Those are your only choices. And yet It's about contract fulfillment with beautiful metal coins. Why is it metal coins? Nobody knows, because they can. And the cubes that are spices but are just different color cubes come in beautiful plastic cups. Why? Because they can. Who cares? So there's contract fulfillment, but then there's my favorite drafting mechanism of all time, the river, where you have a deck or whatever, and the furthest away from it is usually free or the cheapest. And the closer you get to the deck, the more expensive, or in this case, you have to drop a cube on each one you skip over to take that one. So you by all means do it, but you're wasting a lot of your stuff. And you can take the first one, which is of no use to you. So there's that tension constantly, and then you slide everything across, fill in the empty space. Slide everything across, fill in the empty space. It's a flowing river. That's why they call it that. I love it. And this is so fast and so accessible and yet so satisfying on kind of many levels of your experience of gaming. If you're a hardened war gamer, that might be different. If you're a role player, that might be different. But within the Euro world, I'd say, or brand new, this has so much scope to go incredibly well. So it deserves to be in my top 10. It's one of the earliest games I got. And I do have the complete trilogy. Yes, I love Eastern Wonders in and of itself, but the reason I keep the third one is to have the whole trilogy because this means so much to me. This one. I could sell Eastern Wonders. I won't because I want the whole set because I'm a collector. But it's because of what this did for me, and then introducing like our friend, yours and my friend Chris, and other people like that happily humor us, but go, oh, actually, this is really good. And just those moments of, oh, I actually have fun playing board games when my conception of board games is Trivial Pursuit and Monopoly, which I hated as a child.
Yep.
Political rant over, not political, but little rant over. Wonderful. Number 9, Century Spice Road.
Absolutely, we can both have our rants on number 9. I would add on that as well.
9.
Again, I played it with some people from church not so long ago. Said that on the last list, and they picked it over Colt Express and Downforce because they thought the art style was the best.
Wrong.
Go figure. I mean, I can understand that Downforce does look a little bit plain.
Yeah.
But the moment that I loved when I played it with them, and you sort of half alluded to it there, you teach them the 4 actions, and they're like, wait, one of my actions is to pick up my cards. They're like, yeah. They're like, well, that's stupid, isn't it? And then you go, well, sort of, but it's okay, but you need to pick up your cards. It's not just a shuffle and pick up every time sort of game. Like, okay. Got halfway through the game, and my friend Kat, she said, oh, I hate picking up my cards. It's a stupid turn. I was like, it's good though, isn't it? She went, oh, it makes me think. And we got others around the table like, yeah, it makes it really interesting. And it's stuff like that. You're like, that's not a hard thing to teach someone. Yeah. Pick up some cards. Anyone who's played 52 pickup can do that. But I love seeing the lights come on for people when those sorts of moments happen. Then they go, this is a really interesting puzzle. It's frustrating the hell out of me, but it's really interesting me. Yeah. And it does that really well, which is what you said. Well, my number 8, falling a little bit from number 6, but still very high on my list, is Wingspan, which it's nice to know is finally taking its rightful place in your list, and you're for it all of a sudden. I said it when we talked about it in your list. It probably wouldn't have even. It might hit my top 50, but not very high. When I first got it, I thought it was fine. I thought it was beautiful. I love birds. I'm a bit of a bird enthusiast, so it was good. But they're all American birds anyway, and a few English ones as well. But I was like, I'm not that excited. I don't know what a scissor bill is, or so I thought it was fine. And then I got the European expansion almost just because. And then it did a couple of extra mechanics, and it brought in, like I said, British birds, and I was hooked. I was in, and I think I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's my most successful gateway game. And when I say gateway, I don't mean just it's no thanks, everyone can play it and have a good time, but then that's probably where people's gaming interest ends. I mean,
sure.
You show someone and it's not just the art. Obviously, the production is exceptional. We know Stonemaier does really good stuff, and I've souped it up and given it. I've got new chits and speckled eggs and all the stuff, and people go, oh, 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 it's lovely. Oh, and there's a bird feeder as a dice tray and all that, And then people sit down and go, that they do engine building and they do action selection and they do really complex stuff and a remarkably accessible way. And they go, oh, I'd play one of your games again. And it's got to receive plaudits. I know it gets backlash. I know it's getting a bit of like, well, it's a bit lucky, it's a bit this and a bit that. Do you know, I got the Oceania expansion, which makes it less lucky. I actually didn't want it. I've sold it because I want it to have that element of luck. I want people to be able to play it that aren't gamers because that's its job in my collection. And I always loved playing it. I don't think I've ever played a game where I was like, well, that was unsatisfactory, or oh, that I lost because I get to the end of it. I don't care because I've had a lovely time and I've played with my friends and they're happy, and you can't knock that. Number 8, Wingspan.
My number 8 also has beautiful production, and is also a Stonemaier game. Now this takes a little bit of explanation. This has tended to, I think it was in my top 10 when I first got it and was like in that super enamored phase of it, and it settled very comfortably in my 10 to 20 kind of range. It was number 11 last year. And as I explained at the very, very beginning of our top 50, I've just spent the year doing a master's, and I had to come up with a research proposal, and I find it fascinating, even just the couple of rants we've been on just now, just talking about the potential of games. And I'm going to get a bit artsy, but the potential of games to include people, to represent people if done well. That's been our issue with some of the games we've spoken about that have fallen or we don't play anymore. There's lots of talk of lots of anecdotal evidence and some now empirical evidence of tabletop RPGs helping people develop pro-social behavior or deal with difficulties and things. So I thought, hooray, let's try a board game study. And we mentioned it with Lost Ruins of Arnak. I wanted something that combined kind of narrative elements that had enough of a theme that was available in the game, but wasn't forced at you. You weren't reading sections of story or doing anything like that. It was a very mechanically robust game. And so I picked not necessarily the most robust game, but it truly is. Tapestry is a wonderful game from Stonemaier. Again, Civilization themed. It's not really a Civ game. It's just pushing yourself up tracks. And I wanted to present it. Does narrative help people learn? Because I think we, as people that teach people games, like to give people motivation for why they're playing, that it helps them. We know that, but I wanted to prove it. And so, presenting it mechanically or narratively and just seeing the difference. And so in terms of table time this year, there is no equal to Tapestry, because I did so many sessions, sometimes as a player, sometimes as a teacher, sometimes then being taught by somebody that I previously taught to see how they then do it. And so that if I'm talking about scope and utility, I think there's a lot here. I didn't do it as a critique of the game. It has its flaws. If anybody doesn't like it, they probably have good a reason for it, and I can't argue with them. It just works for me. I do love the core game, but in table time and what am I going to pull off the shelf? Like, my partner is sick of the damn thing because she had to play it so many times, and she doesn't like strategy games anyway. And so, it's almost infamous in our house now. But I was then thinking about it for a whole year and going, I really love this. And watching people make choices and go, oh, no, don't do that because you want to do this. And I was super invested, even though it wasn't my place to be, in the playing of the game because I love the game that much. I truly do. So it's made its way up to number 8 this year, Tapestry from Stonemaier Games. Beautiful.
My 53, so only just missed out on the list. It's another one that's out on loan. Like I said, Raiders earlier, and I think I do miss it, which probably is important because it means it will come back, and I'll be like, yeah, I'd like to play that. Often when games go out on loan and I don't miss them, I go, oh, that probably tells me something. This one, I'm like, oh, maybe I like that a little bit more than I don't dislike it. It tired for me. It tired.
Sure.
So, but yes. Okay, my number. We talk about telling stories in games, and I love doing that. And we talked about that earlier with the West Kingdoms. Why I pick one over the other. This one is hard to tell a story with, though it is incredibly thematic. This is Power Grid. Bit of an old boy. I'm trying to get out of the reflection. Bit of an older one. And I know we both have this shaped box in our top 10 and an older, uglier looking game. The front cover is better looking than the board, it has to be said. And this, again, it hasn't got a story, but what it does have is a quite immersive sense of trying to power Germany or Europe or whatever expansion you're playing. You're trying to create a power grid, and you would do that by buying coal burning facilities, and then or oil burning facilities or wind farms, and then you've got to buy resources to power. You need coal or oil. Obviously, you don't need anything for wind, so hey, we should invest in those. And there's an auction mechanic, and there's it's very, very economic, and I am learning about myself that I'm quite mathsy. I don't think of myself as mathsy, but I think that's because I just do it in my head. And I've encountered by playing with other people who go, "Oh man, I've got to work this out to the end." I'm like, "Don't just guess, you'll be fine." It's probably because I'm wired economically. But what it does have actually is a story. For all that, it's a surprise because you progress through the ages, and stuff that was really expensive at the beginning, like nuclear power, perhaps, or recycling power, becomes cheaper. Stuff like coal and oil, a fossil fuel, becomes more scarce. And this was made 20 years ago. It hasn't got any, it's not funded by Greta Thunberg or anything. But it's imagine if it was approved by Greta, Power Grid. But it tells you the story of failing resources, and then how you have to respond to it economically, how the market has to respond to it. And it's been around for ages, and it stays around in my collection because it's one of the best economic games out there. And I personally think, the board is not my favorite, but on the whole, I quite like the sort of 1950s Russian propaganda theme, to it, because it evokes something to me about trying to create power for this arena. And it's got paper money, which I know not everyone loves because it reminds them of Monopoly. I love because it reminds me of Monopoly, and I had over 50 Monopoly sets as a kid because I was an economic board game nerd, it turns out. And so it strikes the right chord to me. I can understand why it would not be in everyone's one, but it does what I like games doing. Doesn't get as much playtime as I'd like. Again, you need the right group, but it's one of those I'm like, I like this enough that it stays here anyway. Power Grid, number 7.
What is about the most opposite game you can think of that could be my number 7?
No thanks.
Ta-da! From the heaviest, driest game, not the heaviest, I know one more that's probably heavier, on your list, to the lightest on mine. There is nothing wrong with this game. I've said it before. I don't care. There's nothing wrong with this game. Everything's good that Rick mentioned. And then you come across the consecutive numbers rule, and I fall in love with this game every time. If you've got, a 30, a 27, 25 and things, and you've been stuck with these, people have shafted you, they've really worked hard to undermine your position in this, and then you get the 26 and the 28, the 29, the 30, the 31. You don't get the 31, you're gambling on it, because if you do, suddenly every consecutive number becomes whatever the lowest card in that stack is, and so you've actually only scored 25 points. And those people that have a 5, an 8, a 12 and a 20, you've just beaten them, even though they had lower cards. It's just it's so good. And this is tiny. is
Yeah.
tiny. And the fact that you deal 7 or 9, however many cards it is, out at the beginning of each round, so you don't know if you can hit those consecutives, then is a different version of push your luck. It's like, can I get those sets, or does that card even exist in this round? Oh boy. There's nothing wrong with it. And if I ever have 3 can be less satisfying, which is its minimum, 3 to 7. But if I've got 4 to 7 players and we don't have time for Century Spice Road,
Yeah.
or
Yep.
if we do have time for Century Spice Road, we can play 3 games of this, at least.
And you want to play the 3. This is the thing.
Yeah.
1 round is not really enough. If you want to play 3 or 4, like as many as you get bored of, really.
Yeah.
Because then the meta game kicks in as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Like,
and the luck
he
of
only
what
got
was in
8
and
points
out.
last time. We're gonna batter him and make sure he gets the 36.
Yeah. Yeah. It's number 7. It was number 7 last time. It is unmoved despite a new game coming in. So it's essentially gone up 1 because the next few have a -1 next to them. No thanks. Number 7, a masterpiece.
Said no one ever. It's just magic. It's just magic.
But it is, though.
I know.
Who are you, Thorsten Gimler? What else have you done?
It's true. It's true. Anyway, my number 6, I'll talk about later.
Okay. So this is the one. Oh, it's gone down 1. I think it was still number 5 last year.
Correct.
Okay. I've got memories. Then, therefore, my number 6 is double check. My favorite 2-player only game.
Okay.
My favorite abstract game.
Mm-hmm.
What a joy. The beauty of Onitama. Partly production is worth your money, but it's a lot of money for what the game is. That's the saddest part. Because you have a neoprene mat here, beautiful, giant chunky pieces, beautiful, and lots of lovely cards that are very big and much bigger than they need to be because it's beautiful. This is why I don't think to ever play chess. I don't dislike chess. I quite enjoy it. I'm not good at it by any stretch. But you can learn to be good at chess, which for some people makes it wonderful because it's an exercise in study. This is 5 minutes. And there are only 5 moves in the whole game. No piece holds any particular move set, like a knight or a queen, or a queen can do everything. You know what I mean? A bishop. There are 5 moves per game that are one of these cards, and they show you where your piece starts or originates from, and then available spaces around it that you can put it on. And then you discard that card. And next time your opponent will be able to take that card and use it against you. Beautiful. Just love it. That's it. That is the whole conceit of the game. And you either get your king, your sensei over to the other side, or you use any of your pieces to take theirs. That's the whole conceit. But just that little twist of those rotating moves going around, and actually you might hold on to one of those moves because you're waiting for the exact moment to use it for the entire game, and then it never comes up and you lose because you didn't use it at the right time. Brilliant. I know you've played it digitally, but the tactility of it, I spoke about it last year, the tactility of it just elevates it for me. It was 5, it's down 1 to number 6, but it's amazing. It's Onitama.
Yeah, I'd really like to try it. It's yeah, like I say, I've played it digitally, so I don't put it on my list because that's not what this list is for. But I did enjoy it. I did find I felt a little wanting because, and maybe this is because of the sort of the rapidity of playing something digitally, but it was too short for me. And you know, we compared chess already to something like Hive. Way back in the 40s, that has again similar tactility, but feels, I don't know, I want games like that to be a little bit longer than that. because otherwise, I don't know. I want to get invested in them, but maybe, like say, if I played it in person with actual the pieces, I wouldn't have that problem anymore because I've engaged with it in a different way, which is ultimately why I play board games and not computer games, because I want to engage with it tactically, but tactilely as well.
Uh, you can have really tense 15-minute long games where you're just edging each other because that's just the kinds of moves come up. Yes, sometimes you'll just get the ones where you can just leap there, and there's nothing they could do about it. But that's 10 seconds of your life, and then you just play again. So it's got that mix. So I had not the same reaction as you, but I liked it less, significantly less. I was like, yeah, it's all right. When I played it digitally, played the physical product with a real person, and oof, it shot up. And again, scope. I've played this with an 8-year-old, and I've played this with pensioners, and it just works across the board, very, very well. That is number 6, Onitama. So now with all that garbage out of the way, we get to the proper good stuff.
The top five.
Top 5, where the game
10% of our 50.
Oh.
Yes, well, let me show you what I have.
I can only remember 3 of your top 5.
I've got nothing.
Oh, that's one of them. Okay, fine. I can remember 4 of your top 5.
See, why have I got nothing in my hands?
Because you've had various iterations and you sold it and downsized and then no longer have it.
Pandemic Legacy Season 1.
Yes.
Is the game that I no longer own, but really, really like. It's a tricky one to categorize because it's the legacy version of Pandemic, and it's worth saying that Pandemic itself has sort of dropped out of the 50, 66, and that would be putting together Pandemic Iberia, and other types, all together. That system of Matt Leacock's that's really good. And Pandemic Legacy Season 2 has also fallen out of my top 50, but I do count each of those legacy ones individually because they do something different. And I mean, maybe it was because it was one of the first legacy games out there, and maybe it was just because it's just so darn good. My memories, and you talked about this with Captain Sonar, it stays in there because that game stays in your mind. And that game of Captain Sonar that we played, one of the best games we've ever played and I've ever experienced in any game. But what happened in May and what happened in September, and this is Pandemic that takes place over the course of a year, those moments will never, ever leave me. And actually a compounding thing that happens in Season 2 that I can't even begin to talk about because it actually broke my heart because of the story that's going on there. And it doesn't feel like an RPG. It doesn't feel like you're creating a story. It doesn't feel like any of that stuff. It's just like, here's the game, and here's some stuff that happens, and here's some cards you have to tear up. And you then have this visceral response to a game that's going on. And I've played other actually legacy games and not had that same response. And maybe because it was the first one, it just has that history. But it is hard to categorize, and it has slipped a little bit. I think it was number 2 last year, because it would be number 1 if it was a game that kept on going, but it's not, and it is relegating itself to memory. And I wonder if even I should just take it off the list because it's just impossible to categorize. But in terms of, and so we talked about the question of like, does this hit the table? No, it hasn't hit the table for 5 years because we finished it and it's gone. And I'm not that animated about playing Pandemic either. So what do I do with this? It's some of the best board gaming experiences of my life. I put it at number 5 because it was very good.
Yeah. I'd be keen to play 0.
I would. I've not played that one yet.
No, because Pandemic, I got bored of base Pandemic, and so I know Legacy Season 1 does something more with that. It still feels like, to start with, I'm playing just Pandemic again.
Yeah, but only for
at the time, I know, but at the time, that was fine. So now, it would feel like going back just to try and get something out of it, whereas 0 is a
Sure.
different thing. It's
Yeah.
it's different. Okay. When I made this list a few weeks ago, and I told you I'm not going to touch my list. I've made it. I've put it to a PDF. I'm not going to touch it.
And I told you I was changing it.
I regret that.
Ah.
My number 5 is probably my number 9.
Ooh.
Just because just hearing myself talk in the last few minutes about the other games,
Yeah.
I think I like them more.
Mm.
But it is a top 10 game, and it is old and relatively unattractive and a strange sized box. This is Concordia, which is a joy. It truly is. It's been in my top 10 since I've owned it, I think. I'm pretty certain. For the past like 5 years or so, it's been in my top 10. And it takes kind of the some of the mechanisms from Century Spice Road and then explodes it into a big Euro game with a map and of the Roman Empire, and you're sending out colonists to essentially gain no, not especially, just to reap whatever produce is there. So there are some grain towns, there are some metal towns, there are cloth towns, and you just go get access to the stuff. You don't. I suppose you can put houses down. Yeah, you do colonize. I apologize. You're making the Roman Empire, but you're doing competitively. Weird. It's not. It's not a theme really based on history in that sense, and it's boring looking, and it's such a silky smooth game. What I say about Castles Burgundy, it's not as bad looking as that. It is better looking and plays even better. But it's that same disparity. If I show this to somebody to be like, I think you'd enjoy this, they'd be like, okay. Have you seen games from the last 20 years? That's not what they look like. And, Gateway Plus level people, probably an unfair term, but people that know games a bit and want to try a bit more love this game because they haven't necessarily built their own kind of preconceptions, and I don't want to say not developed their own taste, but are still willing to be led in that sense, to be like, well, I love what I've done so far. What else is there? This introduces so much. But then also, if you've come from classic games, there's a lot there, not necessarily mechanically, but kind of the feel, the spirit of the thing about spreading over the board and doing resources and that kind of stuff. It's just all there. And so there's just so much good about this. I'm loving it more the more I'm talking about it. So maybe it's in the right place. I don't know. But no, a little bit lower. But top 10, certainly. I've played so many games of this at 2, at 3, at 4, at 5. 5, which can take 2.5, 3 hours, which normally is an immediate no-go for me. And it feels fast. It goes by quickly because it's the Century Spice Road turns of you play a card, you play a card, you play a card. At some point, you play a card to pick up your cards, or you buy a card, or whatever it might be. Your cards are your actions. And it's not like one of the duel games I've been talking about where you get to do crazy stuff. It's just everybody has the same hand of, I think it's like 8 cards that are your actions. Bless you. And
I muted,
one of them's like, move one of your colonists around. Cool. That's it. That's the whole turn. One of them is buy or sell resources. Cool. It's just such fast, simple things that it goes by so quickly. And I forgive its look. I really do. It's great. Concordia, a solid number 9 in at number 5.
Yeah, sure. Well, my number 4 was number 3 last year.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's Birmingham. This is everything I like in games. This is unfussy cardboard chips. I mean, I've got the upgraded poker chips, which are amazing. But it's just some chips and some money and just a few cubes of steel and coal and an economic engine to die for. And it honestly is the most, and I use this word for it, interrelated game that I've ever played. Because it is so far from being cooperative, semi-cooperative, or anything like that. But you help each other as you play, almost inadvertently. It is set in the Industrial Revolution in the West Midlands. And at the time I bought it, I lived in Nottingham, and Nottingham's on the map, and it was kind of nice. It's close. But what you're doing, you're building coal mines and steel mills and breweries to keep the workers happy, and then you ship it. But then you're also making cotton and pottery and manufactured goods. Some boxes with we don't know what are inside. They're manufactured goods, and they get shipped off to places. And it's fairly rudimentary sort of historic economic stuff. It's Martin Wallace who makes rudimentary historic economic stuff. But when you build coal, if you're connected to someone else, when they make a steel mill which needs coal, or they run a train which needs coal, they use your coal. And eventually they will exhaust your coal. And you just flip over the tile. Again, they're not minis, they're nothing special. It's just a little tile, a little square tile that flips over and tells you everything you need to know, because immediately you start making money. And they say, well, but I don't want you to make money. Oh, and I also make points. I really don't want you to have points, but I need coal. Like, okay, cool, yeah. Well, you got to have it because I made it. Well, you going to make your own one? Well, I can't do that because I don't have this. That well, that's just because I got in there. And then if they've been canny and they didn't build near you, they can buy from the market. There's a central market to buy steel and coal. But then if you're canny, you can then build your coal mine next to the market and sell it all and immediately flip stuff over. And you just push me, pull you. And it's the rules are remarkably small.
Yeah.
Like there's a slight complication about building, and it's all card driven. You have to play a card to do anything, because that's a way of saying I've spent this action. So it immediately gives it a clock, which I like. But also, when you're building in a particular location, you might use that location's card. But if you're building a particular type of building, then that's a bit fiddly. But other than that, there are 8 actions which all fit on one playing card size cheat sheet, and it's really simple. And then it is one of the most complex games I own, because the possibilities are just massive.
Yeah.
And and it is. We talked before about like Cheryl and I, my wife and I, tend to just keep games that we both like or both can win at. Or this breaks that rule, because I always win at this, and I like this and she doesn't. But I like it that much, it stays regardless. So yeah, massive, big yes for me. Number 4, Brass Birmingham.
My number 4 was my number 3 last year.
Okay.
And has been mentioned already.
Uh-huh.
Paladins of the West Kingdom. If you like elegant interlocking systems, for you,
yes,
this is the one. Brass, yes. Your systems therefore impact everybody else. This, you could be playing on your own as easily as playing with 3 other people.
True.
In terms of what you're doing. But everything interlocks beautifully. And this is kind of the final evolution of what I've been saying with Spirits of the Forest and McKee. If I want a bigger experience solo, this is the one. I love this at 2. It is perfect at 2. And we've played 3. I think we even did it remotely with using our 2 copies and stuff, and it worked. And I enjoy 3 a lot. And solo is a bit of a bear and takes this whole 2 hours to play. And I sat down to do it again the other day because I love it so much. First time I did it, played it twice in a row on my own. 4 hours just sat there marveling at this system. And it's not like this is still the shiny new thing and I haven't gotten over that. This is a couple of years old. It's broken. It's, it gets pulled out so much. And I've only taught it to a handful of people. I love this for myself. Yes, I think it does have the scope. And if people want to explore this side of my collection, amazing, but it's not no thanks. It's not something I'm going to take everywhere and teach everybody. This is something that I love for me, and it's my go-to. I want a big solo experience. That's just because I just find the crunch similar to brass. It's just got a hefty crunch, and I find this crunch so satisfying. And if you want to look at theme, it does make sense. There's three types of currency, if you like, military might, religious influence, and political power. And they're not their exact names, but that's essentially what they are. And to do anything requires you to be at a certain level for something and produces something else. So to send out your missionary requires religious power, but gives you then political power from now having settled an outpost in that place. That does make sense. Oh, to build a barricade, a wall, the whatever, costs you political power because you have to mobilize your civic people to do their jobs. And now you've gained military might because you now have defenses on your. It just makes sense. And you can look at that, or you can look at blue, red, black.
Yeah,
and it's Garfield, as we've said. It's worker placement. The initial choice of you draw 3 paladins. I will use this one now for his special power. I'll tuck that one to the bottom because I never want to see it again, and I'm going to put this one back on the top of my deck because I might want it next time.
So good.
What a tough choice to even begin your turn, and it's so satisfying. Paladins of the West Kingdom will never leave.
And one thing we haven't said about Garfield across the board: great design. They do twisty worker placements. Great art, Micho, I forget. Iconography.
Excellent graphic design.
Excellent graphic design. Because you were talking about this gives you that, but you need that to get that. And it's just there on the board.
Yeah.
It's there on the board. They do it so well. And I've just seen that Wayfarers, the new one, is just coming to reviewers now. And I'm not sure it's going to be for me, but I really want to try it because they've just got such a great track record, and they make just really clear and easy to play and pretty and nicely tactile games.
Yeah,
they are some of the best publishers in the business.
Absolutely, 100%. Number 4. What's your 3?
Number 3. My number 3 was number 4 last year.
Oh, is this the one I've forgotten? It is the one I've forgotten. How could I forget?
Your number 44?
Oh gosh. Sure.
Look at it.
44.
Or the Ring. Lord of the Rings, the board game. The 3-4 hour alternate history of what might be in Lord of the Rings. The game that I have more unplayed expansions for than I care to admit. Because I'm like, yes, I want all the things. No, I've got to find someone who's going to play it, who actually knows the game well enough that I can actually then fold something new in. I don't even know if I'm that person yet.
Yeah.
But I want all the stuff.
Yeah. And
exactly what you said earlier in terms of, I'm not really a war gamer. I'm not a dudes on the map sort of fighter. I'm that's not how I play games generally.
Yeah.
Since playing this, I've actually played things like Risk, the Star Wars edition. I go, I can see some of this trope a little bit more. But I never enjoyed Risk as a kid. That was way down on my list. But the card play, the character driven, of course it matters that I'm a Tolkien fan. This wouldn't play well with anyone who wasn't. But there are moments that happen, and like you said earlier, you just play this card and it's a fairly ridiculous thing, like you get 1 extra dice, or the dice roll is +1 on the result. Fairly minimal. But the fact that it just says Blade of Westerness, or and it says you need a hobbit in the fight, and if there's a Nazgul, the hobbit can take by rolling a 5, and you're like, that's great because I know exactly what's going on there.
Yeah.
Or the situations where I've been where it's all come down to a battle on the Shire.
Mm.
The Witch King has flown there. Loads of people are attacking. If they get it, then the whole thing's over. And Gandalf legs it and spends extra dice, because it's still just spending dice at the end of the day. But he legs it to the Shire to protect them, holds off the Witch King because Gandalf, wipes out the Witch King's power, and you just got this amazing storytelling experience. And I was so ready for this to be number 2, but it's not. I really like it, and I probably cooled on it ever so slightly because it is hard to get to the table. It is a real beast.
Yeah, yeah.
I would say this is the most complex game I own.
Sure.
But I can't ever see it leaving. I can't ever see it leaving my collection because I love it, and I'm trying to convince myself that I really don't need the neoprene mat that's out. Surely I do. Number 3, War of the Ring.
Which is your biggest narrative game? Number 3 is my biggest narrative game. And in fact, my top 3 are because of the narrative potential they present. Yes, I love tight systems more than anything else. Yes, you love a beautifully integrated theme. Above all, I either want it to tell a story that takes me or allow me to tell stories. Which, this is the first of those.
Ooh.
Brand new at number 3.
Yes.
Sleeping Gods. This is a narrative game. That is what it is. It's what it's for. This has a storybook. This is a storybook.
Wow.
That's what it is. But there is a board and there is a game, and the game is really good. I played this again, just a solo play. Technically, I've only played this once, but I played a campaign of it in 2 days. It's supposed to take you about 6 sessions. It took me 2 sessions because I fell in love. And there are a few things that I aim to do once a year. Watch the Lord of the Rings trilogy extended, because who cares about the cinematic release? Every other year, watch through Avatar Last Airbender, because I love it. It's the best cartoon that's ever existed. And now on that list is play Sleeping Gods. I have a week of annual leave in December, and I'm going to do it. I'm just going to set it up and leave it for a couple of days, and I'm going to play through Sleeping Gods, because I've seen maybe a fifth of what is in there, because I followed the very clear direction it points you in, learnt the game, played it through, got to the end, knew everything I'd done wrong, but I'd discovered some incredible things that he's just written. Ryan Lockett, you're an insane person to have written, designed, painted everything. I know he's got a team and people help him, but fundamentally he is an auteur. And I want to go in a different direction. I want to see what's out there. You're sailing your boat around, and it's the most movie idealized image of pirates I've ever felt. That, what's over the horizon? It's for the sake of the adventure, not the reality of pirates and those kinds of games or films or anything. It's the idealized hope of discovery and what's out there and what interesting new tale will I uncover and be part of. And it's all there in this box, and it's beautifully presented. The combat mechanisms are a little are the hardest to internalize, I think, is the best way to say it. They're not necessarily tricky, they're just slightly less intuitive, and they're producing a new game that kind of addresses some of that. And I nearly backed it and thought, you know what, I don't need another game that I can spend 60 hours in when I've only spent 6 in this one. Let me discover this. This is why Seven Wonders has died. Seventh Continent has died for me, because yes, that brought me into this world, but Sleeping Gods has gone, now see what really exists, what is possible in this design space of narrative-driven games. It's exceptional work, and I love everything I've experienced of it, and cannot wait to go through it again.
Do you think I'd like it? Because I'll tell you why I asked the question, because I've thought about near and far, above and below, and now sleeping gods, all that kind of thing, a number of times. I'm not sure that my wife would particularly enjoy the sort of like tell some story, get into character stuff. That's not really her vibe either. But when we think about, we used to play computer games, and you loved Zelda and Final Fantasy and
Sure.
these sort of big sandbox adventure, tried, got to catch them all kind of stuff. And I largely could take or leave it and mostly left it.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yes.
You think I'd like it?
I do. You don't. There is no invitation to roleplay.
Sure.
In a solo game, you control all of the characters. It's a bit of a task, really, actually. And I think 2 would be the best, where you take like 4 each and rotate the captain. So it's more following somebody's story. Yes, you're the one making the decisions on what their response is. So I get that it has that kind of roleplay element. But fundamentally, it's a mechanically sound game that produces cool moments mechanically.
Yeah.
Then to have an immersive world that honestly invites you. We've spoken before about why Lord of the Rings works for you and other things don't.
Yeah.
And it's because you just start with a friendly little neighborhood in the country.
Yes.
And then this thing gets added.
At this point, rather than the game.
Yes. And then this thing gets added.
Yes.
And then this thing gets added. And so you just drip fed. Right. Actually, the world is bigger than you thought. Yeah. Yes, there's an initial dump as to why these people exist at all.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's down to you to discover it. And so it's drip fed at your pace.
Yeah.
You can focus on your one task and go do that thing. I'm not like that. I want to do every side quest possible. Yes. And then I've run out of time, and actually I failed the main quest and got just about the worst ending you can and didn't care. So not as much as me, I don't think. But yes, I think there are things in there for you, for sure, that I think may not be in Above and Below and Near and Far.
Okay. That's good to know. Yeah, I love the look of it. I'd like to try it, of course, but got to find the time. Well, my number 2 is a bit of a surprise to me. I got this because I thought, yes, this looks like my sort of game. And I initially played it, and I'd seen some of the criticisms for it. I'd seen some of the promotion for it, and I agreed with all of it. And I thought, oh, yeah, it's probably just about a top 10 game. And I chucked it in the list, and I thought, yeah, it's probably okay. And then when I put the list together for this thing, and I asked the question of sheer table time, I was like, this is basically all I've played all year. This is Ark Nova.
Yes, it is.
And I can't believe it's as high as this, because it does have some problems. It does have too big a deck, and so you might not get the cards you want. It does have all sorts of issues with it that the people have complained about. And that's true and irrelevant, because I have played the heck out of this thing. And do you know what? Mostly in solo, which I don't really play solo games, but it's enough of a puzzle. And it, my wife will watch some rubbish on the TV, and I'm not really interested in it, but I'll sit there and just and plod away at it. And as we said, when it came up in your list at number 48, it really shouldn't work on a whole bunch of levels, because it does feel like, on first blush, a whole mosh of mechanics thrown together. Where is it an engine builder? Is it a tableau builder? Is it a polyomino placement game? Is it a river game, where you're controlling the action selection? Is it whatever else, worker placements in there? That there's all sorts of mechanics going on, and I know I've forgotten some even in that. and yet there are things in there that are I've just not seen in other ways. We talked about that river mechanic. You pick this, accelerate, you wait till it gets more powerful, but then you try and do other stuff that's not so powerful because you want to go around to there's not turns so much. Like it's a bit like actually Architects of the West Kingdom or Tapestry. Both just keeps on going until someone's finished the game. It's got alternate tracks, so you're trying to get money, but you're also trying to conserve animals. It's got a theme that I really enjoy. And again, and I said this at your point, I've had people play this game who this would be too high, way too high. They're like Ticket to Ride is probably their level, and then they play this and they go, I didn't win, but I loved collecting all those monkeys. I love building a playground. I could see the world that I was, and production wise, it's only okay.
It's fine.
It's okay. It's not bad by any means, but it's not world beating. But I've just played it and played it and played it and played it and played it. And yes, of course, there's stuff in there that's going to tickle my fancy because I love engine building, because I love tableau building, and we'll see that in just a moment. And I love economic games, and so yeah, of course, it was going to work, but I'm surprised how well it has worked. And honestly, until a week or two ago when I put together the list, it was not as high as this, but on reflection, I haven't played anything else anywhere near as much as this, and I could play it right now and I'd be fine. Thank you very much. Number 2 is Ark Nova.
My number 2, I'm just going to pull the plaster. Vindication.
Oof.
Last year's number 1.
Yeah.
It is number 2. I've waxed lyrical about Vindication many, many times. It allows me to tell all sorts of stories. I have to inject it. It is very much the second type. Sleeping Gods invites me into a story. Vindication allows me to tell stories in a world. And it does it exceptionally well. Their production is incredible. But I've gone on and on about it, and I'm going to wait really until my number 1 to kind of balance those two things off, why the changes, the place has changed. Because our number 1s, if you've watched any of our videos, you'll know what they are. Rick, tell us your number 1.
My number 1, and it's a different box than it was last year, is Terraforming Mars.
Of course.
And the reason it's a different box is because I, for Christmas last year, got the big box edition with the nice minis, which, oh Lord, Terraforming Mars needs, because it is an ugly, ugly game. And I fully appreciate that. It's now much more attractive than it ever was.
Yeah.
Also, do you know what happened? I got a big box and I went, oh, I should probably fill this with stuff. And I've bought 2 more expansions since. I don't want the Turmoil expansion. That really doesn't do anything for me. Events and politics, it's not the one. But I've thrown in Venus Next, and I've thrown in Colonies, and I already had Prelude, so I've got 4 expansions and a shed load of promos, and like basically every sort of like plastic mini that you can get for it. It's so good, and I've played it so much, and my wife likes playing it. We sat down the other night, and she was like, "Oh, I could play Terraforming Mars tonight." I was like, "Yeah, great!" And it's a complex game; it's a weighty game, but she's very happy to play it. You are Terraforming Mars. There's a story, there's a narrative. It's a bit like Power Grid and other ones that I've talked about on this list. The innate nature of trying to get oxygen and heat and water to Mars tells its own story. And then you've got, I mean, I can't get it out. I've got so many cards now. I think it's probably going on 300 individual cards that have all got different art, all tell different stories. And I keep on playing it. And one day I'm like, surely I'm going to tire of this. But I don't. I really like it, and I keep on playing it. And I know it's not your favorite, but it really does it for me. And I'm not interested in the Ares expedition. I thought I would be, but actually I don't want what Race to the Galaxy does, that follow mechanic. Sure. I don't want that in there. I'd be interested to play it, but and if I was like, oh, make it smaller, make it shorter, shrink that board. I love the board. I've got multiple boards. I love the way it interacts with there's different milestones, but the different and it's all based on science. And I don't know, I haven't checked whether Frick's got it right. Jacob Frixilius, the designer, but I believe it, and I believe in the story that happens when I play it. And I just keep on playing this game. And if Ark Nova made it to number 2 by table time over the course of 6 years as I've had this game, table time, I play this 1 player, I play it 2 player, I play it, I probably don't play it 5 player, but everything else I'm like, Oh, I love it. 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 And it's going nowhere. And I've souped it up to the nines because I can. And why buy new games that you don't know if you're going to like when you can invest in the games that you love and pimp them out to the nth.
Yeah.
More and more, I'm like, I've got so much space. Let's get the big box of Terraform Mars and
Yeah.
play everything and make it as juicy as it can be. I quite like it. It's number one.
Yeah. Which I have done for my number one and your
Yes.
number six. Of course, Scythe. This box doesn't even get used anymore. This is now full of little games.
My box does get used.
I have the big box. I have all gameplay expansions that exist. I have even a custom what they're called folded space insert that I've glued together and put in there, so everything just pops out super quick. This game has been, barring last year, my number one since 2016 when it came out. It's
2016.
Both 2016, incredible year.
Great.
And it does so many things so well, and it's probably the least narrative of my top three. But it's also probably the most nuanced, and I think that's why it's clambered back up. Vindication gives you a world, and you can go explore it and find stuff and create your own story and be able to do this, do this, do this, do this, whichever way you want to go, and you get to go do that. Scythe gives you a restricted world, a world that's tense, a world where something's not quite right, and it could go horribly wrong if you don't pursue it correctly. And I know I'm almost adding more tension than the game presents, but I think that's there.
Yeah.
The beautifully stark and dreary art is still beautiful. It's not bright and colorful. It's not Reef.
Nope.
It's not Azul. It's none of those like, oh, here's some bright primary colors. It's grungy and dirty and visceral and a beautifully simple action selection system with upgradable powers, which is fantastic. That as you upgrade one by removing a cube to make it more powerful, so you put it on another place to make that place cheaper, so you are thoroughly improving yourself. And it looks like a combat game, but it's Cold War, it's an arms race, it's actually pretty bad for everybody if you fight, but sometimes you got to do it, and you've just got to take the toll for that. And you could lose the love from your people, and they don't want to follow you anymore, and you're less successful, and they'll give you less taxes. It's just everything has a justification, but on the scale of Vast to Root, here's Scythe. Vast, everyone's doing something incredibly different and trying to achieve something incredibly different. Root, you're trying to do the same thing, but you do it very different ways. Scythe has variable player powers. But you're all going for the same thing and just doing it in a slightly different way, a slightly different order, but it still has that feel that I am thoroughly distinct from you. It almost creates the us and them for that arms race tension to be as potent as it is. It manages...
and you feel threatened by those who are just more aggressive, just by that player power. And yes, maybe if I'm playing with my wife, just generally people who are more aggressive, but you don't want that. They all have their special ability, and you're like, I don't want you to be able to use that. I want to restrict that, but I also need to just get on with my own stuff, please, because I'm trying to build this world from the ground up. This is hard work. This is hard labor. It's called Scythe, not so much because you scythe people down, but because you got to farm. You got to put the hours in. You got to get people on side. It's a beast of trying to develop a fallen world.
And then obviously Rise of Fenris is a little campaign expansion, which I loved playing through. Really cool story. I might come back to it another day. I've kept all the stuff. I might do, I might not. I don't know, but I will just keep playing this game. I will keep playing it and keep playing it because it offers me something every time, and I play it digitally because it offers me something every time. I prefer physically, as we talked about, tactility matters, but it truly is just my number one game, and I can't argue with it. So that's it. We did it. That's our top 50. It's taken some time. but we got there. This one particularly, we gave ourselves a little bit longer. But thank you so much for joining us on this journey. Gosh, I've gotten very unnecessary and pretentious, but never mind. We did it. Thank you for hey I aim to be back at some point. I hope you join me for it. Do subscribe if you don't already. If you enjoyed, leave a comment. Tell us what your favorite games are. We love to hear from you. Until potentially next year, I'm Dieter and Rick for Win Some, Lose More and our top 50 Toodaloo.